make of the fact that your grandfather's statue is currently boarded up in Parliament Square?
Good morning, Susanna and Piers, and good morning, Britain. This, for us as a family, takes us down memory lane. I remember in 1984, there was a bust in the South Bank of London that was erected by the Greater London Council, which the former president of the ANC, Oliver Tambo, was invited to unveil the bust. And a few years later, must have been about 4 years, in 1988, I came to visit London and found the statue defaced. The bust had been removed and vandalized. And Madiba was coined to have been a terrorist and a communist. And to us and the anti-apartheid movement at large knew that Madiba stood and championed the greater cause of peace, of democracy, justice, and human rights for all. We understand the issues and the challenges that Britain today may be facing, which have been accelerated by the death of George Floyd and the BLM campaign. But as a result, we know that statues, for one, and that of Madiba, are statues that should be able to inspire us and also enable us to pass them on to the next generation to admire and be able to ensure that the future generations are able to understand the people that stood for justice and the freedoms that we enjoy today.
Nikosi, so let me just ask you. Because I want to jump in there. I had the great honour, I had a private meeting with your grandfather in 2003, around the time of the Iraq War, and he was a remarkably impressive person who lived up to every expectation I could possibly have had. But he was famously a man who, when he came out of prison, you know, he could have taken revenge on those who'd kept him in captivity for nearly 3 decades. But instead, he forged peace with the enemy, if you like. There's a remarkable picture on the front pages of the papers today over here, which you may not have seen, but it's one of the Black Lives Matter protesters saving the life of a white right-wing protester who had gone to London yesterday to protest against him. And he saved his life, literally pulled him from a mob that was beating him up and he thinks would have killed him. It reminded me of the essence of your grandfather, this, and the imagery is so powerful. You know, obviously, since George Floyd's death, there's been so much angst and anger and rage, particularly in America. What do you think your grandfather's advice to people would have been about how to proportionally and correctly effect change after the death of George Floyd?
I think more than the racism that we are seeing, we should look at George Floyd's passing in the light of the unraveling of oppressive regimes, and the oppressed peoples around the world are beginning to have a platform and are beginning to have a voice. And this image of a Black African man assisting a white British male has been a powerful image which then speaks to us in terms of humanity, to look within. And I think it is a courageous thing to see people as such taking the baton and saying that we have to get beyond race. It is about humanity. We can't be complicit any longer facing oppressive regime and witnessing brutality across the world, whether be in America, whether be in Britain, whether be in Australia, Palestine, Western Sahara and Kashmir. We have to take a stand for justice and human rights for all. And I think
sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to mention, you know, you're talking about this man, black man, from South London, in fact, Patrick Hutchinson, his name is. And as Piers says, his photograph is everywhere. It's so symbolic, as you reflect as well. And clearly you've seen the photograph carrying this white protester. I think it's really interesting, the message, though, that Patrick Hutchinson sends. Because on his social media, he said it's not black versus white, it's everyone versus the racists. And I thought that was a very powerful reframing of the debate in case it descends into a black versus white issue. It is everyone who stands against anything that is racist systemically in society.
Yes, Susanna, we have to call racism for what it is, but it is also associated with the oppressive regimes that have been at the helm of this. You cannot look at racism alone, but you have to look at it holistically as to what has led to such. I mean, if you look at the George Floyd incident, it's not just about a white cop killing a black man. This is what African Americans have been experiencing from the days of slavery, from colonialism, from occupation, from the civil rights movements. This has been the story of George Floyd and the story of African Americans and oppressive peoples around the world. So we have to elevate the discussion beyond racism and look at creating a platform for oppressed nations around the world.
Nikosi, on the question of slavery, the statue issue here began to build up because a statue of Sir Edward Colston, who was a famous figure in Bristol, but had also been an infamous slave owner and slave trader before he became somebody who gave back to the community, as he would put it. His statue was pulled down and thrown into some water. As a result, there then became this sort of campaign to look for fault in everybody who has a statue, including your grandfather, including Winston Churchill, including Mahatma Gandhi. Your father famously used to say, you know, I wasn't a saint. He used to talk about doing and saying things he wished he hadn't done. Winston Churchill was not a saint. He had said some stuff which he shouldn't have said. He held views he shouldn't have held. Mahatma Gandhi, the same, said quite inflammatory and racist things. And yet the totality of their lives, many would argue, in each of those cases, far outweighs the negative in terms of positive, and they should therefore have statues and be celebrated. But I do have a lot of sympathy about the issue of people who built their wealth and their charitable work on the back of slavery, like Edward Colston. And I don't see why statues to slave owners and slave traders should still be lording it over particularly black people in Britain. What do you feel about that?
Quite correct, Piers. I would say, firstly, statues, as I said earlier, should inspire us and be able to be admired by future generations to come. But on the other side, you cannot have statues that bring about anger and disgust upon humanity. And even though those individuals played somewhat a negative role in our past, they do have a place in society, and that might be in museums, for example. We cannot totally erase the past and pretend that the past never existed. But we can take such statues and put them in museums for future generations to learn about the wrongs of the past so that they can be able to fully understand the position we are today and where we inspire and hope to go in terms of humanity. But I think people like Gandhi, people like Martin Luther King, people like my grandfather have been individuals that have inspired and brought about hope that we will indeed have equal justice for all and be able to ensure that those that violate human rights will be brought to book.
OK, well, Nikosi Mandela, it's so interesting to talk to you this morning. Let's hope that your grandfather's statue is released from its cover-up.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to ask you, Nikosi, would you like to see... It seems to me wrong that your father's in a box now.
Of course.
In Parliament Square. I feel the same about Churchill and Gandhi. Would you like to see the box removed? Would you like to see your father liberated from this box he's been put in?
Absolutely. I mean, I started, Piers, speaking about the bust that was on South Bank.
Yes.
That bust was reinstated and it was put back in its dignified place. And we would also want to see this box removed and Madiba liberated. Mm-hmm. You know, London has always been a place of real significance to us as a family, because my grandfather's 70th birthday was celebrated at Wembley Stadium. And the anti-apartheid movement in London inspired real hope to the anti-apartheid movement. So we would appeal to the politicians and citizenry in London to have that box removed and let us have Madiba liberated.